Hello there, my name is Sixo, but more on that later, as now it's time for a brand new unboxing video. And this one comes courtesy of the wonderful TF Source, so you'll find a link to their site in the video description. And as literally everyone and their grandmother is talking about Beast Wars at the moment, let's have a look at an unofficial take at Transmetal Megatron, shall we? This is Toyworld TWBS-01 Beast General. Right, well here is Beast General in his box, and the first thing you'll notice is it's quite small, but then this is not masterpiece scale like a lot of the stuff I review, and yeah, it's fairly nice. I mean, there's some attractive artwork, quite cartoonish on the front just there, and it looks good. Now it does actually come in a little plastic baggie. I've already removed that, and then here is the box itself. So we've just got the instructions there, and then it's got this kind of foam interior, and there's the toy. There you go. Little mini Megatron. Right, so let's see everything you get in the box. First up is his tail weapon, this rather nice looking translucent purple sword, two small heads of the absolutely minuscule variety, and then these two rather adorable little rubber ducks in reference to a very famous scene in the cartoon. And that's your lot in terms of accessories. I mean, that's really all you need, I guess. Couple of weapons, couple of rubber ducks as you do, a few spare heads, job done. And so let's take a look at the toy itself. And yeah, first impressions are it looks pretty good, actually. Really like it. It's definitely a good likeness for the character from his on-screen appearance. And you know, it's certainly, for my part anyway, barring the original toy, which I used to have, it's the most accurate rendition I've seen to the screen. I mean, actually the original toy wasn't too far off, but this looks really good in that regard. And it's quite tidy and clean. I mean, if we just do a little 360, you can see it's basically what you might expect if you're familiar with the character. Do think the little beast mode head pokes out a little bit just there, and maybe these thruster sections hang down a little bit further on the back than I might have anticipated, but overall I think it's pretty good. I mean, for such a little thing, they've definitely packed in quite a lot of detail on areas such as the chest, which looks really cool. I will say the colour is kind of an odd one to me. It's not quite what I would have anticipated. It's almost kind of more of a reddish brown, kind of like murky sand color. I don't know, it's really hard to put my finger on. I feel like I've captured it quite accurately on the camera, so there you go. But to my eye anyway, it's not quite the kind of more golden brown that I would have anticipated from the cartoon, and it does look a little odd. I'm not gonna lie. But you know, that aside, I think actually it's pretty spot on. The purple's really nice, it has to be said. It's got this kind of nice shiny kind of chrome effect to it. That looks really good. Couple of decent paint applications as well. So for you know, such a small little thing, actually I think it looks really good. Has to be said. And you know, it is a good look versus the cartoon model for sure. I do think that these little T-Rex arms hanging off his back here, those are slightly cumbersome for my liking. Yeah, I've got to be honest there. I guess it's kind of accurate, but it would have been nice if maybe there was some way to kind of hide those a little bit more than actually you can. I mean, you can obviously fold them round to the back like so, but then they just kind of hang off the back of his shoulders, so I don't know that that's necessarily a solution. From pictures and what I've seen, they are supposed to be fanned out to the side like so. It's not too bad, you know, you get used to it, but they look a little bit obvious. Right, coming in for a bit of a closer inspection, and you can see that actually the face is quite remarkably on point actually. It was something that I wasn't entirely convinced about from photos, but actually considering the small scale of this guy, I really do think that they've done a great job with it, you know? And again, the details are really nice. It's got this kind of very sparkly purple paint on the face, which looks good versus the animation model. Little tiny light piped red eyes, which is cool. I think the proportions of the face are good. It's good. They've done a good job with it. Some nice molded details on areas such as the shoulder pads, and then you've got this kind of silver trim on there as well. That looks great. Now, one area that any Transmetal Megatron design has got to get right is the chest, because it's just so distinctive, right? Like really bizarre point of the character model, and I think they've done a great job with it here. It again looks like the right proportions. The sculpting is excellent. I mean, these little ridges and all of that just there is really cool. I think the color is really nice again, and nicely applied paint. Even the little red eyes, it all looks on point. Really like the look of these fans on the back, and they do actually move, which is kind of a nice little touch. I mean, you might have expected that, but there you go. And again, the purple looks really cool. Again, it's quite hard to capture on camera, but it's quite a deep sort of shiny purple, actually quite reminiscent of the original toy. One thing that I will grumble about, and you can see it just here to the side, this little ball joint which the fan section is hanging on was clearly painted, and wow, bad mistake. Really not a good idea, because you can see already straight out of the box the paint is, I mean, not just flaking off, right? It's off. I mean, that's like a bare ball joint. So, I don't know, that's just a weird bit of design. Painting ball joints, not a good idea. The one on the other side has fared up a little better so far straight out of the box, but you can tell that it's going to be an issue. And again, just a weird choice in terms of design. Now, on a slightly more positive note, the feet again look really, really nice with this kind of purple chrome effect. That looks really, really good. And then just coming up to the top, you've got this kind of silver trim again on areas such as the inside of the legs. So it's all quite nicely done in that regard. Now, in terms of articulation, you actually get quite a bit. And the head is on a ball joint, so that's very freely moving. That's good. Going around to the arms, and the shoulders are on a ball joint as well. I will say that they've got a little bit of give in them. It could do with just being maybe like a little bit tighter, as you can see. It's okay, it will hold if you get the friction right, but yeah, it could be tighter. There is a kind of mushroom peg, which creates a bit of bicep swivel. Similar for the wrist, you get a wrist swivel because of that as well. They're both very tight, it has to be said. And there is a double jointed hinge at the elbow as well. Got a decent waist swivel in there, again, that's very tight. And then quite a bit of articulation in the legs too. You've got these kind of two joints at the hips just there, including a little ball joint just inside the leg, which is a bit weird, but hey. You've got double jointed knees, so they've got really good range, and then decent range of articulation at the ankles as well, including a bit of ankle tilt, so that's very cool. Which means that all told, he's really quite articulated actually. You can get him into some pretty decent poses. Again, for such a little thing, you know, there's quite a lot of play value involved in this. Now, in terms of weapons, of course, you've got that sword, which is quite tight to get into his hand, actually. It fits very snugly indeed. I suspect there's going to be a bit of paint rub on that at some point as well. We'll have to see. Then you've got the Dinosaur Tail, which of course he typically holds in his hand in the cartoon. Now, this doesn't actually attach as such. It just kind of slides over the hand, and if you push it fairly tightly like that, it will hold. And they both look really, really cool when they're in his hand. I mean, the sword is very, very stable, as I say. Could, again, do with just a bit more friction at that ball joint on the shoulder to make sure that it holds in every position, but it's fine. The Dino Tail, stroke gun, stroke, I don't know, pliers, whatever you want to call them. It doesn't really hold too stably. I mean, I've just about got it now by really kind of ramping it onto the hand, but it can be a little bit of a fiddle to get it on there. Not as much articulation in the Dino Tail as I might have imagined. It doesn't really kind of bend up or down, a little bit just like that to the side. And of course you can open the kind of pincers just on the end there as well, which is cool, but there's really not as much articulation in that tail as you might expect. And there you go, look, it's just kind of popped off again. So yeah, it can be a bit of a pain to kind of get it on stable, but it looks good. To be fair, the sword is nice and it does look good, but realistically I could take it or leave it. You know, it's this Dino Tail is the real kind of killer accessory for me. I mean, obviously it's essential for the Dino mode, but also it's the one that he uses very frequently in the cartoon. So in that regard, yeah, it does look really cool. Could do with a bit more articulation, but still, it's nice. I will say that this little kind of pliers bit on the end is not the tightest as well, so it just kind of, I don't know, flops around a little bit, as you can see. Right, so of course the other gimmick here is the head, so you can just go ahead and pop that one off on the ball joint and then replace it with one of the two alternatives. Let's go for the more kind of stoic face first of all. Yeah, that's actually pretty good. I mean, you know, compared to the kind of slight smirk that's on the regular face that comes out of the package, this is quite different. And yeah, big lips, I will say. He's got the old siege lips, I suppose you could call them, but it still looks good. Then you've got this other alternate face, which is a smiling one, and honestly, I don't see the difference between this really and the one that was on him out of the box. It looks the same. Anyway, then you've got the two little rubber duck accessories, and there's no real way for them to interact with Beast General himself. They're just kind of, you know, fun little inclusion, I suppose. And yeah, I mean, it's nice. What can I say? It's something that I'll probably never ever use again, realistically, but still, it's a little bit of fun. I mean, I will say that the paint on these, as I've already mentioned, is very, very nice. It's very, I mean, they are absolutely tiny, so they've definitely gone down with them in terms of detail. This one, actually, I don't particularly remember from the cartoon, I've got to say, so maybe that's just a bit of a weird inclusion, but the kind of more standard rubber ducky, yeah, definitely that is what you kind of get from the cartoon, so there you go. Of course, what you can also do on the reverse is flip out these little kind of turbine sections, and turn them that way because they're on little ball joints, and then that does kind of replicate his look from the cartoon. That was something that you couldn't do on the original toy, but indeed you can here, so that's quite cool, meaning that you can fly in robot mode. I will say whilst we're back here that this whole section here doesn't really tab into anything, seemingly, so that's kind of annoying. It just kind of flops around a little bit. I mean, it will kind of hold fairly securely, but it's going to come out at some point during posing. So overall, where do we stand on this robot mode? Well, to be honest, the more and more I'm handling it, the more I'm kind of finding the slightly loose joints to be a bit of a bummer. I mean, just posing him up or whatever else, he just doesn't have that feeling of stability or whatever else. So it kind of feels like it's quite difficult to get into a very solid pose. He does look really nice. I'm a little bit concerned by some of the paint rubbing on those little ball joints at the back that we looked at earlier. I haven't noticed it anywhere else, to be fair, but it just kind of makes me a little bit concerned. So I'd say it's not bad. Do you know what I mean? It at least looks really cool. The color's a little bit dubious, but it's a fairly decent looking representation of the character. And in that regard, you know, there's some success here. Now, really what's interesting about this guy is his size, because of course he's not Masterpiece scale, at least not Beast Wars Masterpiece scale. But when you bring in some of the G1 Masterpieces, like his namesake Megatron here, this is MP36, you can see that actually that's not too far off in my eye. If you've seen the agenda, or indeed any of the kind of, you know, latter season 2 or season 3 Beast Wars episodes, you'll know that there's quite a lot of interaction with, well, some of the G1 cast, even though they're, you know, sort of dormant at the time. And actually, you know, that to me looks pretty good, right? That's quite, if anything, quite good fun. Similar story with MP44, of course, Optimus Prime. And again, you know, obviously these characters have quite a memorable moment shared together in the cartoon. And, you know, I don't want to say it's 100% correct, you know, I wouldn't really care to guess, but to my eye at least it works well enough that actually you could consider that for a display. And I do think that's quite good fun. I remember musing back when they sort of, you know, first started talking about doing Beast Wars masterpieces, what the scale would be. And I've seen a few people over the years say that it's almost a shame that they're not in scale with the G1 you know, masterpiece releases as well. Well, here you go, that's how it would look. If anything, the Beast Wars MPs would end up being absolutely tiny. I mean, case in point, here he is with Ocular Max Buzzard, which of course was our last unboxing review, and you can see there just how small he is overall. I mean, really, really small stuff. I mean, speaking of Beast Wars masterpieces, here you go. This is him compared with the original design of Megatron in masterpiece form, and you can see the size difference there. If anything, if this guy was masterpiece scale, he'd be even bigger, I think, just a tiny bit anyway. And yeah, you can see how teeny tiny he is overall. And in fact, even versus the original Generation 1 Optimus Prime, you can see that he's smaller again. Ultimately though, where he works best in my collection anyway, is with masterpieces. And in that regard, as I say, it may be something to consider, you know, if you are after a kind of recreation of that scene from the agenda, then you could do a lot worse. You know, I think it actually looks pretty good. So anyway, let's go ahead and check out transformation on this guy. Shouldn't be too complicated, but here we go. Okay, and here is Beast General in his Dino mode, and yeah, the transformation's not all that fun. I mean, it's relatively simple. It's basically what you might expect it to be, you know, in terms of how it converts, but actually there's a lot of clearance issues and some panels that are just very, very hard to kind of force in as well. It's all kind of obviously in the body section just here, which is the main bit of transformation, particularly the upper body, with getting these two side panels with the dino arms in at the sides. Requires quite a bit of force and various wrangling and whatever else, and it's just a bit unappealing, really, to be honest. There's a couple of times where I was sort of forcing it, thinking, yeah, it really shouldn't be as hard as this, but hey ho. Anyway, here is the Dino mode. So, you know, and it looks pretty good, actually. I mean, it's I guess it's essentially what you might expect. I actually don't think it's a complete dead ringer for the T-Rex head. We'll take a look at the head in a bit more detail in just a minute, but I do feel like that's, I don't know, there's something about it that doesn't scream Transmetal Megatron to me from the cartoon, I've got to be honest. And again, you can see more of that weird colour on the body just here as well. But overall, it does look very nice. And generally speaking, you know, it's on point versus the cartoon. I'm kind of holding the foot there as I have not that much confidence that it's going to stand completely stably, to be honest. It is for now, so that's good. That's something. So yeah, the look is not bad. It's not bad. I definitely think it's marred slightly just by some of the looseness in the joints. I mean, again, I don't know, these legs just don't feel as stable as I might want them to. You know, this tail actually is holding on quite nicely, so that's something. I will say these ball-jointed arms are really starting to annoy me. They've popped off several times during transformation, and there's definitely a bit of paint rub going on inside the ball joint sockets now. A bit similar to what we saw just here earlier, which you can now see is you know, getting worse on the side. So, you know, this loose tail at the back as well is kind of unfortunate. It's a little bit lackluster, to be honest. And in fact, you can already see that there's some paint chipping going on here on the purple sections as well, just particularly in that spot, but a little bit there as well. And that is really unfortunate, to be honest. That's just straight out the box, transform once, paint chipping. So, not too sure about that. Anyway, here's a little close-up of the Beast Mode head, and you can see it just there. And it does look really nice, to be fair. I mean, there's some nice molded detail on there that looks pretty cool. The colour is nice, just hope the paint chipping doesn't continue. You can, of course, articulate the jaw as well, as you can see. There's a little red tongue in there, which is a nice touch. And, of course, you can just close that up. And there is a bit of articulation in the neck as well, tiny amount anyway. There we go, you can just go up a little bit like that. Now, in terms of other articulation, there's actually really not that much to write home about. I mean, there's little ball joints in the arms just here, so that is what it is. That's the only joint in the arms. The legs is basically just carried over from the robot mode. I mean, they've kind of hinged them slightly here, but actually I thought that would be a movable joint, but it's not. It kind of locks up again during transformation. Tail we've already talked about. There's really not a lot of movement in that. And, you know, there's nothing in the neck, so it is a little bit static. Anyway, you can also deploy his third mode of sorts, kind of a vehicle mode. So you just flip up these little thrusters at the sides like so, and the little roller skates out like so. And that leaves you with his so-called vehicle mode, which is just about every bit as ridiculous as you might imagine. And, you know, fair play to them for embracing this one. So there is some stuff to like here. I mean, ultimately, it does look really cool in both modes. I think it's a nice design, you know, and there is some fun features as well, and it does kind of vibe with the character as you know, might imagine him from the cartoon, so that's all good. I just don't really have some kind of quality concerns, you know. I mean, again, with that paint, I am a little bit, you know, worried about that brown paint, that it's going to start peeling off in certain spots, particularly where it kind of rubs during transformation or whatever else. Similarly with the purple, you know, maybe that's just a little bit of, I don't know, flash or something like that, but it is a concern, I will say. And then, you know, with the loose joints a little bit, it just doesn't feel the most solid. So, you know, I haven't got the most overwhelming evidence yet to say, hey, this isn't a quality figure, but I'm starting to see the signs of that. Do you know what I mean? I mean, again, in terms of size, you know, obviously he works pretty well with the Masterpiece line. And, you know, in that regard, I do think it's kind of cool. I think if you just wanted this guy as like a sort of one-off thing, you know, to have on a Masterpiece shelf or whatever else, you know, there's definitely some fun there. I guess ultimately what this is doing for me is really making me hope that we get an official Takara Tomy Masterpiece in the proper Beast Wars scale at some point, because that really would be something to see. I do love this design ultimately, and you know, it would just be majestic. For today though, I'm a little bit torn, to be honest, because there are things I like, there are definitely things I don't like. I think the quality concern is definitely my biggest one. It just doesn't feel particularly solid and robust. There are some choices like the paint on the joints there, which is just, that's just bad design, frankly. Do you know what I mean? The colour is a little bit odd as well. Not really feeling this kind of weird brown that they've got going on. And then again, you know, loose joints. So I think on that basis, I do like it, and there is some you know, positives to be said about it, but given the quality concerns, I'm afraid for today it's going to have to be a boot. So that's Toyworld Beast General. Now I'll put a link to TF Source's listing for this guy in the video description, and I'll be able to get the full photo review up on their blog soon. Otherwise, that's it from me, so don't forget to drop me a like if you enjoyed today's video, and have a great rest of your day. TTFN.